Daddy, the mail lady always smiles at you. Little girl giggled. Then his daughter's next move made them both blush. Jason Pierce was sitting at his desk in the spare bedroom of his house in a quiet Phoenix suburb, trying to finish a logo redesign for a restaurant client, when his 6-year-old daughter Harper burst through the door at 2:28 in the afternoon, announcing at full volume that the mail truck was coming down the street and they needed to go outside right now. This had become their daily routine over the past few months. Harper would hear the distinctive sound of the USPS truck a few houses away and insist they go check the mailbox together. And Jason had stopped questioning it because taking an afternoon break from staring at his computer screen was probably good for his eyes anyway. And Harper loved being outside. He saved his work and followed his daughter, who was already sprinting toward the front door with the kind of energy only 6-year-olds possess. And by the time he made it to the driveway, Harper was standing at the mailbox doing her best to look casual, even though she was practically vibrating with excitement. The mail truck pulled up right on schedule at 2:30, and the driver, Vanessa Torres, climbed out with their mail bundle in hand. And Jason noticed, like he did every single day, that she had a really nice smile, the kind that reached all the way up to her eyes and made you want to smile back without even thinking about it. Vanessa had been their mail carrier for about 8 months now, and over that time their interactions had progressed from polite stranger waves to actual conversations. Nothing deeper, personal, just friendly small talk about the weather, or Harper's latest obsession with collecting rocks, or how the Suns were doing this season. But it was the highlight of Jason's day in a way he hadn't fully admitted to himself yet. She was wearing her standard USPS uniform, with her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and aviator sunglasses pushed up on her head. And when she saw them waiting, she broke into that smile that Harper had apparently been studying like it was her full-time job. "Hey, Jason. Hey, Harper. How's your afternoon going?" Vanessa's voice was warm and friendly as she handed over a stack of mail that was mostly junk and bills. And Harper immediately launched into a detailed explanation of the lizard she'd found in the backyard that morning that was missing part of its tail. Jason had learned that Vanessa was actually genuinely interested when Harper rambled about stuff. She didn't do that adult thing where you smile and nod while clearly not listening. She asked follow-up questions and remembered details from previous conversations, which was probably why Harper had latched onto her so hard. "That's so cool. Did you know lizards can drop their tails on purpose when they're scared and then grow them back? It's like a superpower," Vanessa said while kneeling down to Harper's level. And Harper's eyes went huge because that was apparently the coolest fact she'd ever heard in her entire life. Jason stood there watching his daughter and their mail carrier discuss lizard regeneration and tried not to notice how Vanessa's whole face lit up when she talked to Harper. Tried not to notice that she'd been wearing a little bit of makeup the past few weeks when she definitely hadn't when she first started the route. Tried not to notice that these daily 2:30 encounters had somehow become the thing he looked forward to most in his work-from-home existence. He'd been a widower for 6 years, ever since Harper was born, and complications during delivery took his wife Emma before she ever got to hold their daughter. And for 6 years, Jason had poured everything into being both parents for Harper and building his freelance graphic design business, and he hadn't even considered dating because the guilt and the grief and the sheer exhaustion of single parenting. A baby, then toddler, then kindergartner took up every available emotional space in his brain. Vanessa stood back up and made eye contact with Jason over Harper's head. "I saw you guys planted those sunflowers by the fence. They're coming in really nice. You've got a good eye for landscaping." And Jason felt his face get slightly warm, which was ridiculous because it was 105 degrees outside in late spring. And also she was just commenting on flowers like a normal human being. "Thanks, Harper picked them out because she liked that they were taller than her. We're tracking to see how tall they get before summer really hits." And he was aware that his voice came out slightly different when he talked to Vanessa. A little softer, a little more relaxed than his normal dad mode tone. They talked for another few minutes about nothing important, just the easy back and forth of people who'd gotten comfortable with each other through repetition. And when Vanessa finally said she needed to finish her route, Harper waved enthusiastically, and Jason found himself watching the mail truck drive away for just a second longer than necessary. The second Vanessa's truck turned the corner, Harper spun around and looked up at Jason with an expression that was way too knowing for a first grader. "Daddy, the mail lady always smiles at you," She said it like she was delivering important scientific findings, and Jason blinked down at his daughter while his brain tried to figure out where this was going. She smiles at everyone, sweetie. That's just how Miss Vanessa is. She's a friendly person. He said it casual while heading back toward the house, because standing in the Arizona afternoon sun was like being slowly roasted alive. And Harper followed him, still talking. No, Daddy, not like how she smiles at other people. She smiles at you special, like really big, and then her eyes get all crinkly, and she laughs really long when you make jokes that aren't even that funny. Jason stopped walking and looked at his daughter, who was dead serious. And he had no idea how to respond to that, because 6-year-olds weren't supposed to be that observant about adult interactions. Over the next week, Harper's commentary on Vanessa's daily visits escalated from occasional observations to a full-blown running analysis that would have been hilarious if it wasn't so weirdly accurate. Daddy, she's wearing lipstick today. I think it's pink. She wasn't wearing lipstick last week, Harper announced one afternoon after Vanessa had left, and Jason had absolutely noticed the lipstick, but he wasn't about to admit that to his first grader. Another day, Harper pointed out that Vanessa had laughed for a really long time at Jason's dumb joke about the package being lighter than air. It wasn't even funny, Daddy, but she laughed like it was the funniest thing ever. That means she likes you. And Jason tried to explain that some people were just polite laughers, but Harper was having none of it. The observation that got him, though, was when Harper said with complete certainty, "She says your name all slow and quiet, not like when she says my name or when the pizza guy says your name. It's different." Jason started paying attention in a way he'd been deliberately not paying attention before, and once Harper had pointed it out, he couldn't unsee it. Vanessa did smile differently at him than she did at other people on the route. He'd seen her interact with his neighbor 2 houses down, and it was friendly, but not the same warmth. And yeah, okay, maybe she'd started wearing a little makeup, and maybe her uniform shirt looked more pressed than it used to, and maybe she was timing her approach to their house for when they were most likely to be outside. He also became hyper-aware of his own behavior. The fact that he'd started setting a phone alarm for 2:25 so he wouldn't miss mail time. The fact that he'd been wearing his better t-shirts instead of his ratty design school ones. The fact that he'd been coincidentally needing to work in the front yard right around 2:30, doing completely unnecessary tasks like inspecting sprinkler heads or organizing the recycling bin. Things came to a head on a Thursday afternoon when Vanessa mentioned that she really loved the cucumber plants growing in their little vegetable garden, and Jason, before he could overthink it, said, "Do you want some? We've got way more than Harper and I can eat. I can grab you a few." And Vanessa's face lit up in a way that made Jason's chest do something complicated. "Really? That would be amazing. I've been wanting to start a garden, but my apartment doesn't get enough sun." And Jason walked over to the garden bed and picked 4 good-sized cucumbers, while very aware that Vanessa and Harper were both watching him. When he came back and handed them over, their fingers touched for just a second. Barely a brush of skin, but enough that they both pulled back slightly fast and both of their faces went pink. And Harper, who was standing right there watching the whole thing, had this expression like she'd just witnessed something monumentally important. Vanessa thanked him about 3 times while backing toward her truck, clearly flustered, and she waved at Harper and said, "See you tomorrow," to both of them, but her eyes were on Jason when she said it, and then she was gone, and Jason was standing in his driveway holding junk mail and having some kind of internal crisis about whether he'd just flirted with the mail carrier or if that was a normal neighborly interaction. Harper solved that question immediately by grabbing his hand and announcing with the confidence of someone who'd just solved a mystery, "Daddy, you like her. Like her. Your face is all red, and you did the smile you do in pictures with Mommy." And Jason felt like he'd been hit in the chest with a basketball because his 6-year-old had just called him out in the most direct way possible. He looked down at Harper, who was grinning up at him, waiting for confirmation, and he tried to figure out how to explain to a first grader that, yes, okay, maybe he did like the mail lady in a way that was more than just friendly, but also he hadn't dated anyone since her mother died, and the idea of having feelings for someone felt both exciting and terrifying and incredibly guilty all at the same time. "It's complicated, sweetie. Grown-up feelings are different than kid feelings." He said it while heading back inside because this conversation needed to happen somewhere with air conditioning, and Harper was not letting this go. But do you like her, yes or no? It's not complicated. Either you like her or you don't. And Jason realized his daughter had accidentally stumbled into a truth he'd been avoiding for weeks. That somewhere between polite waves and cucumber exchanges, he'd developed actual feelings for Vanessa Torres, and he had absolutely no idea what to do about it. That night after Harper was in bed, Jason sat on his couch staring at nothing and thinking about his wife Emma, who he'd loved completely and who'd been gone for 6 years, and he tried to figure out if feeling something for someone new meant he was betraying her memory or if maybe she'd want him to be happy and not spend the rest of his life alone. He sat back and thought through months of increasingly friendly doorstep conversations. And yeah, okay, Harper was right. Vanessa smiled at him in a way that was different, special even, and he'd been smiling back the same way without even realizing it. The question was, what did he do with that information? Did he ask her out and risk making their daily interactions weird if she said no? Did he just keep enjoying the 2:30 highlight of his day and not push it further? Did he trust his 6-year-old daughter's assessment that the feeling was mutual? And he fell asleep on the couch without answering any of those questions, but knowing that tomorrow at 2:30 he'd be outside waiting, and Harper would be watching everything with those sharp little eyes that saw way more than any adult wanted them to. Harper Pierce had been learning to write letters in her first grade class for the past 3 weeks, and her teacher, Mrs. Alvarez, had been really big on the idea that letters were a way to communicate important information to people you cared about, which had apparently given Harper some ideas that her dad definitely would not have approved of if he'd known what was happening in her little 6-year-old brain. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and Jason was deep into a client video call in his home office talking about color palettes and brand identity, which meant Harper had about 45 minutes of unsupervised time to execute what she clearly thought was the most brilliant plan ever conceived. She grabbed her box of crayons and a piece of lined paper from her school folder and sat down at the kitchen table with the kind of serious focus usually reserved for very important missions. The letter took her almost 30 minutes to write because she was printing each letter carefully and kept erasing words that didn't look right, and when she was done, it said in slightly wobbly crayon letters, "Dear Miss Vanessa, do you want to come to my daddy's birthday? He is turning 32. Also, do you like him? Circle, yes or no. Love, Harper." And then she'd drawn a picture at the bottom of 3 stick figures holding hands, one small one in the middle with pigtails, which was obviously her, one tall one that said Dad on his shirt, and one with a ponytail wearing what looked like a male uniform, with little hearts floating around all 3 of them. She was extremely proud of this letter and carefully folded it into thirds the way Mrs. Alvarez had shown them, and then she had to solve the problem of getting it to Vanessa without her dad intercepting it first. Harper knew that mail went both ways. You could receive it, but you could also send it. And she'd watched her dad put letters in the mailbox with the little red flag up enough times to understand the basic concept. She found an envelope in her dad's desk drawer while he was still on his video call, and she very carefully wrote "The Mail Lady" on the front in her best handwriting, and then she sealed the letter inside and stuck 3 stamps on it because she wasn't entirely sure how many you needed, but 3 seemed like a safe number. At 2:15, she heard her dad's office door open, which meant his call was over, and she quickly grabbed the envelope in her shoes and announced that she needed to go outside right now to look for that lizard from last week before mail time. And Jason, who was exhausted from explaining the same concept about font choices, 17 different ways, just said, "Okay, sweetie, stay in the front yard where I can see you." Harper ran outside with her letter clutched in her hand and made a big show of looking under bushes for lizards while slowly working her way toward the mailbox. And when she was sure her dad wasn't watching through the window, she opened the mailbox, put her letter inside with the outgoing mail, and lifted the little red flag to let the mail lady know there was stuff to pick up. She felt incredibly sneaky and accomplished. And when the mail truck pulled up at 2:30 and her dad came outside, she was practically bouncing with excitement that had nothing to do with getting mail and everything to do with the fact that her master plan was in motion. Jason noticed Harper was being extra giggly and weird when Vanessa handed over their mail, but he chalked it up to 6-year-old energy and didn't think much of it when Harper asked very loudly, "Miss Vanessa, do you like birthday parties?" And Vanessa said, "Sure. Who doesn't like birthday parties?" while smiling at Jason in that way that made his stomach do flips. The next afternoon, Jason was working on mock-ups for a coffee shop rebrand when 2:25 hit, and Harper came barreling in, announcing mail time with her usual enthusiasm. And they headed outside to find Vanessa's truck already parked in front of their house, which was slightly earlier than normal. Vanessa was standing at their mailbox, holding their mail in one hand and a small envelope in the other. And her face was bright pink in a way that had nothing to do with the Phoenix heat. And when she saw Jason walking up the driveway, her expression went from embarrassed to panicked to something like amused mortification all in about 3 seconds. Jason immediately knew something was weird because Vanessa looked like she wanted to either laugh or die of embarrassment, and she held out the small envelope toward him without saying anything at first. "What's that?" Jason asked while taking their regular mail from her other hand, and Vanessa made this sound that was half laugh, half groan, and said, "I think you should probably read this. I found it in your outgoing mail, and it's addressed to me." And she handed him the envelope that said "The Mail Lady" in what was very obviously his daughter's handwriting. Jason's brain went into immediate oh no mode as he opened the envelope and pulled out the crayon-written letter, and he read it once, then read it again because surely he'd misunderstood. And then he looked up at Vanessa, whose face was now approximately the color of a fire truck. His own face went hot so fast he felt like he might actually combust right there on his driveway. And he looked down at Harper, who was standing between them, absolutely beaming like she'd just won a prize. "Harper, did you write this?" Jason's voice came out strangled, and Harper nodded enthusiastically. "Uh-huh. I invited Miss Vanessa to your birthday on Saturday. We're going to have cake and everything. And I asked if she likes you because I needed to know." And she said it with the kind of innocent pride that made it clear she thought she'd done something wonderful and had zero understanding of why both adults looked like they wanted to disappear into the ground. Jason looked at Vanessa and started apologizing so fast the words almost ran together. "I am so sorry. I had absolutely no idea she was planning this. She's 6 and she doesn't understand boundaries yet. Please don't feel obligated to respond to any of this. I'm mortified. This is so inappropriate." Vanessa's face was still red, but she was also trying not to laugh, which made the whole situation somehow worse and better at the same time. "It's okay, really. It's actually kind of sweet. I just wasn't expecting to get a birthday invitation and a yes or no question about feelings in my mail route today." And her voice was shaking slightly like she was holding back either laughter or panic. Harper, who was watching this entire exchange with great interest, decided this was a good time to add more information. "Daddy's birthday is Saturday, and we're having chocolate cake because that's his favorite. And Grandma and Grandpa are coming, but I thought you should come too, because Daddy talks about you a lot, and he said you're really pretty when I asked him." If Jason's face had been red before it was now actively on fire, and he turned to his daughter with a mixture of horror and disbelief. "I did not. I mean, you are, but I didn't say it like that, Harper. You can't just tell people things like that." And he was vaguely aware that he was both denying and confirming in the same sentence, which was probably making this entire disaster worse. Vanessa was definitely laughing now, a slightly hysterical kind of laugh that people do when they're so uncomfortable they don't know what else to do, and she held up both hands like she was surrendering. "Okay, I'm just going to go finish my route and we can all pretend this didn't happen, if that's easier for everyone. I don't want to make things weird." Harper's face fell immediately, and her voice got that pitch that meant tears were about to happen. "But you didn't answer the question. Do you like my daddy, yes or no? And are you coming to his birthday?" And Jason wanted the earth to open up and swallow him whole, because his daughter was essentially asking his crush if she liked him back, while said crush was just trying to do her job and deliver mail. Vanessa looked at Jason, and he looked at her, and they had this moment of silent communication that was pure mutual mortification, mixed with something else neither of them wanted to name. And finally, Vanessa knelt down to Harper's level and said very gently, "I think your dad and I need to talk about grown-up stuff in private, okay, sweetie? But thank you for the invitation. That was very thoughtful of you." She stood back up and made a hasty retreat to her mail truck, while Jason stood there holding a crayon letter and trying to figure out how to explain to a 6-year-old why you can't just write to adults asking if they have romantic feelings for your parent. Harper looked up at him with big confused eyes. "Why did she leave? Did I do something wrong? I thought you wanted her to come to your birthday." and Jason sighed and picked her up even though she was getting too big to carry easily. We need to have a talk about privacy and boundaries, and also about how you can't just ask people questions like that. It makes them uncomfortable. Miss Vanessa was embarrassed. That night, after Harper was in bed, Jason sat on his couch thinking about the crayon letter and the little stick figure drawing with hearts everywhere. And he felt about 17 different emotions at once. Embarrassment that his daughter had basically outed his feelings to Vanessa. Anxiety that he'd made their mail carrier uncomfortable and ruined their daily friendly interactions. Guilt that he was even having feelings for someone who wasn't Emma. And underneath all of that, a tiny spark of hope, because Vanessa hadn't actually answered the question either way. His phone was on the coffee table, and he kept looking at it, wondering if he should text an apology. But he didn't have her number, and also what would he even say? Sorry, my daughter asked if you like me. Check yes or no. That would somehow make it worse. Friday afternoon came, and Jason was genuinely anxious about mail time. For the first time in months, he had no idea how to face Vanessa after the letter incident, and he'd considered just not going outside, but Harper would definitely notice and ask questions. At 2:30, they headed to the mailbox, and Vanessa pulled up right on schedule. And when she got out of the truck, she looked nervous but not angry, which Jason took as a good sign. She handed him the regular mail and then pulled a small envelope from her pocket. And Jason's heart started racing because he recognized his own address written on the front in very neat handwriting that definitely wasn't crayon. Harper's invitation deserves a proper RSVP, Vanessa said it quietly, and her face was pink again, but she was smiling, and Jason opened the envelope with hands that were slightly shaking to find the original letter inside with yes circled in blue pen, and a note added at the bottom that said, if the invitation is real, I'd love to come. If it was just Harper's idea, I understand. Better we. Jason looked up from the letter, and Vanessa was watching his face, and Harper was watching both of them like this was the most interesting thing that had ever happened in her entire life. It's real, Jason heard himself say, and his voice came out rougher than he meant it to. I mean, I didn't write the letter, obviously, but the invitation is real, if you actually want to come. My parents are hosting at their house. It's just family and a couple friends, nothing fancy. But if you want to be there, you're absolutely invited. Vanessa's smile got bigger, the real one that Harper had been commenting on for weeks. Then I'll be there. What time? And just like that, with a yes or no question in crayon and a proper RSVP, everything changed. Saturday afternoon arrived and Jason was significantly more nervous about his birthday party than any 32-year-old man should be. Standing in his parents' backyard in Scottsdale, helping his mom set up folding chairs, while simultaneously watching the driveway for Vanessa's like a teenager waiting for a prom date. Harper had been vibrating with excitement since she woke up that morning, asking every 15 minutes what time Miss Vanessa was coming, and reminding Jason at least 6 times that he needed to tell her she looked pretty when she arrived. And Jason's mom had picked up on the energy immediately and cornered him in the kitchen with a knowing look. So your daughter invited the mail carrier to your birthday party, and you're pacing around my house like you're about to take the SATs? Is there something you want to tell me? And Jason had tried to play it cool, but his mom had raised him and could read him like a children's book. Vanessa showed up at 3 carrying a wrapped gift and wearing jeans and a floral top instead of her postal uniform, and Harper literally sprinted across the yard yelling, "She came! Daddy, she actually came!" Loud enough that every single person at the party turned to watch this woman walk up the driveway. Jason met her halfway, trying to ignore the fact that his entire family was absolutely staring, and Vanessa handed him the gift while looking slightly overwhelmed by the attention. I wasn't sure what to bring. I hope you like coffee because I got you this whole bean sampler thing. Harper mentioned you drink a lot of coffee, and the fact that she'd been paying attention to details his daughter mentioned made Jason's chest do something complicated. You didn't have to bring anything, but thank you. This is perfect. I'm glad you came. And they stood there for a second, just smiling at each other until Harper crashed into Vanessa's legs with a hug that nearly knocked them both over. The party was small and casual, just Jason's parents, his younger brother Matt with his wife and their 2 kids, and a couple of Jason's friends from college who still lived in the area. and Vanessa folded into the group more naturally than Jason had expected. She helped Harper and Matt's kids with the water balloon station, jumped in to help Jason's mom bring out food when everyone was too busy talking, and when Jason's dad started telling embarrassing childhood stories, she laughed in a way that was genuine and not polite. Jason caught his mom watching them multiple times, the way Vanessa would glance over at him to make sure he was okay, the way he'd gravitate toward wherever she was standing without even realizing he was doing it. And when his mom pulled him aside to help grab candles from inside, she said quietly, "She's lovely, and Harper's clearly attached. But are you sure you're ready for this?" That question hit Jason harder than he expected, because he'd been asking himself the same thing for weeks, whether 6 years was long enough to grieve, whether Emma would want him to move on, or if she'd feel replaced, whether it was fair to bring someone new into Harper's life when she'd never known her mother. "I don't know, Mom, but Harper asked Vanessa if she liked me in a crayon letter and she circled, yes, so I think I need to at least try to figure out what this is." And his mom's face softened in that way it did when she was about to say something deeply parental. "Emma loved you enough to want you happy, not stuck. Honey, she'd hate seeing you alone for the rest of your life. And that little girl in there deserves to see her dad actually living, not just surviving." After cake and presents, when the sun was starting to set and Harper was running around the yard with her cousins in a sugar-fueled chaos, Vanessa helped Jason collect paper plates and cups, and they ended up alone by the recycling bin, which was possibly the least romantic location ever, but it felt significant anyway. "Thank you for coming. I know Harper's invitation was unconventional to say the least, but I'm really glad you're here." Jason said it while not quite making eye contact because feelings were still terrifying, even at 32. And Vanessa set down the stack of plates she'd been holding and turned to face him directly. "Can I be honest with you about something? I've been timing my mail route to hit your house at 2:30 for like 3 months because I knew you'd be outside. And when Harper wrote that letter asking if I liked you, I panicked because I thought my crush on you was way less obvious than it apparently was." Jason's brain short-circuited for a second because she just said the word crush in reference to him, and his face must have shown his surprise because Vanessa laughed, that slightly nervous laugh she did when she was flustered. "I probably should have led with something smoother, but I'm out of practice with this whole thing. I moved to Phoenix after a really bad breakup and took the postal job to start over. And I've been lonely but also scared to try again. And then there was you and Harper at 2:30 every day, being kind and normal, and I just kept showing up hoping you'd notice." Jason took a step closer without thinking about it. "I noticed. I've been setting an alarm on my phone so I wouldn't miss mail time. Harper called me out on it weeks ago. Said you smiled at me special, and I tried to deny it, but she was right. She saw what I was too scared to admit." They stood there in Jason's parents' backyard next to a recycling bin, having the most honest conversation they'd ever had. And Jason told her about Emma dying when Harper was born, about the guilt he carried for being relieved sometimes that he didn't have to split parenting duties, about feeling like he was betraying his wife's memory by having feelings for someone new. Vanessa listened without trying to fix it or minimize it, and then she shared about her ex who cheated and gaslit her for 2 years before she finally left, about moving across the country to somewhere she didn't know anyone, about taking a job that kept her moving because staying still felt too vulnerable. "I've been scared that letting someone in again means setting myself up to get hurt, but Harper's letter kind of forced my hand in the best way, made me be brave when I wanted to keep hiding." Jason reached out and took her hand, and they both looked slightly surprised that he'd done it, but neither pulled away. "Would you want to go on an actual date sometime? Like dinner where we're not surrounded by my family and 6-year-olds hopped up on birthday cake?" And Vanessa's smile was the real one, the one Harper had noticed first. "Yeah, I'd really like that. Fair warning, though, I'm probably going to be super awkward because I haven't been on a first date in like 5 years." They went to dinner the next weekend at a little Italian place in Tempe while Jason's parents watched Harper. And it was slightly awkward at first, the way first dates always are when you're trying to transition from friendly to romantic. But by the time dessert came, they were laughing about Harper's matchmaking skills and making plans for a second date. 3 months passed and Vanessa became a fixture in their daily life that went beyond the 2:30 mail delivery. She'd stop by after her route ended and stay for dinner, came to Harper's school art show and soccer games, helped Jason debug website issues for his design clients, even though she knew nothing about graphic design, and slowly, carefully, they built something real. Harper had started calling her Miss V and would run to the door when she heard Vanessa's car pull up. And one afternoon, Jason found a drawing Harper had made at school that showed three stick figures labeled me, Daddy, and Miss V, with my family written across the top in crayon. And when he showed it to Vanessa later, she got tears in her eyes. "Is this okay?" Vanessa asked while looking at the drawing. "Me being this integrated into her life? Into your life? I don't want to overstep or make her think I'm trying to replace her mom." Jason pulled her close, and his voice was steady when he answered. "Emma will always be Harper's mom, but there's room for you too. Harper knows the difference, and she's choosing you every single day, and so am I." They had Harper's school family day event a few weeks later, and Harper insisted Vanessa come, introduced her to her teacher as my Miss V who brings our mail and makes my daddy smile. And Jason watched his daughter beam with pride at having both her people there and felt something settle in his chest that had been unsettled for 6 years. The original crayon letter ended up framed and hanging in Jason's home office. And one day when Vanessa saw it, she started crying in the good way. "I can't believe a 6-year-old's letter asking if I liked you changed my entire life. Like that piece of paper with circle yes or no made me brave enough to admit feelings I'd been hiding for months." And Jason wrapped his arms around her from behind while they both looked at Harper's careful crayon handwriting. She saw what we were too scared to see. Kids are like that. They don't have all the adult baggage and fear, so they just call it like it is. And right on cue, Harper appeared in the doorway and announced with complete confidence, "I told you she smiled at you, special daddy, but you didn't believe me. Grown-ups are so silly sometimes. Sometimes the smallest voices see the biggest truths. Sometimes a 6-year-old with a box of crayons and a lot of opinions notices what two scared adults are desperately trying to hide. And sometimes love shows up at 2:30 in the afternoon in a mail truck, and it takes a child's innocent bravery to make two people admit what they've been feeling all along." Jason had spent 6 years convinced he'd had his one chance at love and lost it. Vanessa had spent 2 years building walls to keep from getting hurt again, and Harper had taken one look at both of them and decided they belonged together and made it happen with a letter that asked the simplest question in the world. If this story reminded you that kids see more than we think they do, that moving on doesn't mean forgetting, that sometimes we need someone to be brave for us before we can be brave ourselves, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Thanks for being here with us. And remember, love doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives in a mail truck, and sometimes it takes a 6-year-old's letter to turn two maybes into one beautiful yes.